Do y'all know about the Office of Censorship in the United States? The Office of Censorship was an emergency wartime agency set up in the U.S. from December 19th, 1941 to aid in the censorship of all communications coming into and out of the United States, including its territories in the Philippines. The efforts of the Office of Censorship to balance the protection of sensitive war-related information with the constitutional freedoms of the press is considered largely successful.
Largely successful.
Oh, it was amazing. Oh,
Thank you, Wikipedia, for telling us about the successful Office of Censorship. It's just
loose lips
perfect.
sink ships.
Just totally perfect.
It does.
The fact is, look at that. Thanks, Ike, the censors. Why would we not see the same thing in a World War III scenario? Or even, maybe we wouldn't even call it World War III. Maybe we enter into full-scale war with just Russia alone and NATO. Why would we not see this same effort?
Of course,
Well, we saw this effort with COVID.
Exactly. I was just about to say, didn't we have the Biden administration pressuring social media companies to remove information that they consider to be misinformation?
But I'm saying escalate to the next degree.
The FCC commissioner nominee, who is up, I can't remember her name right now, but they're trying to block it. This is exactly her position.
We just went through 2 years of understanding what it was that the amount of people, the critical mass amount of people would go along with, and they ratcheted things up and they ratcheted things up in the name of crisis, in the name of national emergency, and they just had a huge system-wide test of everything that they could roll out without seeing any meaningful pushback whatsoever. And in Canada, they're about a year ahead of us.
And you know what? I'll add this, Tim. Maybe this is a little bit of a black pill here, but I don't think we'd have another Office of Censorship because we don't need one.
Yeah, we already have Google.
Exactly.
Yep. They just flip a switch. You're done.
Or Alphabet, rather. It's even more terrifying. They have like 13 companies, which are like AI.
We are the Alphabet.
Alphabet is the name of the company. It's funny because we also have the Alphabet agencies.
Yeah. Right. It's not a coincidence.
Yeah. Well,
they were probably like, we're kind of like one of those alphabet companies. And they're like, yeah, we are. Alphabet. We'll just call ourselves Alphabet.
There, at some point,
in
I wonder if Google was, doing all this really great work, and they were like, "Don't be evil, guys." And then some bureaucratic administrative state guy walks in and says, "We're taking over." And the first thing we got to do is, guys, that slogan, "Don't be evil." We're evil. Come on, that's the new motto.
I thought that they were trying to get rid of a double negative. When you say "Don't be evil," people hear evil, 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 and then they just start thinking it and be. But when you write it and you read it, it interacts with your brain differently than when you hear it.
No, Ian, they're just evil. It's just
that might be true too.
I mean,
it's different people that own the company now.
Yeah,
like Larry and Sergey were pretty cool, but man, did that thing get out of hand.
Aren't they still in Alphabet though?
Partially. I just saw that Sergey sold a bunch of stock last July, I think. Maybe it was Larry. One of them sold like, I don't know how many millions of dollars worth of stock.
They want to control what you think. They need to rally people behind. This is why they got so triggered when I said I despise appeals to emotion, because I'm directly calling out what is very obvious propaganda. Crying translators?
Yep.
No. Hold on there a minute, man. The job of a translator is to translate. Why would you hire someone or keep someone on the job if they're crying? You'd be like I said before, you'd be like, "Oh no, he's crying. Let's get him into the break room and have some coffee and take a breath and get someone else in there who can do their job."
And
because it's manipulation.
To follow up with what you said, Seamus, like we don't really need an Office of Censorship. They closed the Office of Censorship in 1945 when the war ended, but basically then they started the liberal economic order within like 8 months, and I think they just winded in all that censorship ability into this new spy network of Five Eyes or the global military industrial complex.
I mean, it's interesting because for a long time, you had, what was it, the 3 and then the 5 major networks that everyone got all of their information from. And that was wonderful for them because it was very easy to control what people were seeing and hearing. And then the internet popped up, and now it seemed as if there was a threat. People could get their information from everywhere. But fortunately for them and unfortunately for us, a lot of that power has been consolidated, and we're not quite back in the same position, but in some ways we're getting there. I'm optimistic on some level that we won't quite be able to get back to that. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if people are too scared to speak the truth, and most seem to be.
Yeah, self-censorship is as effective as forceful censorship in a way.
Yeah, well,
Even
it's
more.
interesting. There have been studies which have suggested that people are better capable or would prefer to endure physical pain over social rejection.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's psychological suffering.
Well,
I know psychological
Stasi
suffering in general. And so if people feel as if they are being rejected by the group, or they fear being rejected by the group for stating something, they're going to be very likely to keep quiet in the same way that they'd be likely to keep quiet if they thought someone would physically aggress upon them for speaking out.
So this is what the Stasi got into towards the, everybody, you watch The Lives of Others, one of the greatest movies on communist surveillance systems and the programs that they had people informing each other in East Germany. So that was the 1960s. By the 1970s, 1980s, the Stasi wasn't running these massive surveillance programs anymore, and they weren't running these massive incarceration programs the way they're depicted in that film. What they ended up doing was they realized that if you were a dissident, if you were someone who was a troublemaker, they had a problem with you, it's exactly what Seamus was just laying out. First thing they would do is start to ostracize you, and then they would start to shame you. They would smear you in the media. They would drag your name through the mud. They would essentially blacklist you, and they would make it so that the social shame upon everyone else of even associating with you would be enough to destroy you. And it was actually much cheaper and far more effective than throwing you in prison and making a potential martyr of you.
I wonder about this. Like, how is a show like this possible in these, we're literally saying that.
Partly because it's a group of us.
Wing and a prayer.
Haven't you had the SWAT team come like 5 times?
Yeah,
now?
I mean, Tim.
Six.
How is it possible? It is possible for now. But look at
2
the
months.
forces. Look at the forces trying to shut it down.
I still feel like we're in the prelude.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with a big group, a large enough group of people communicating these ideas makes it hard to stop the idea. If it's one person alone in their room on a webcam, then you get swatted.
And that's why when I see censorship, I do speak out against it, even if it's someone I don't particularly agree with or don't particularly like or support. The idea that one person or one entity just has this ability to blanket wipe out all communications, right? That's actually a much bigger issue than some idiot on a podcast that I don't listen to.
Yeah, the vulnerability of our system isn't talked about enough. From comet strikes to floods to earthquakes to volcanic super eruptions to just a power outage from a solar flare or well,
you're seeing these for example, you're seeing these stories that Google and Apple Pay are shut down in Russia, and so suddenly because they went cashless, now people are saying, wait, how do I get on the subway? How do I pay for things in stores? How do I do this? And so we've outsourced all, if you're signed up for all these things, now you're outsourcing your very ability to function in society to Silicon Valley. So that gives them that. I mean, we're talking about sovereign power that you're giving.
Artificial
never
disasters.
go cashless.
Mm-hmm.
We can never go cashless. We can never go. I mean, that has to be within our DNA as like a fight to the death. We can never be a cashless society.
Agree.
So you think we need some sort of federal power that deigns that currency valuable?
I think you need a physical, even not necessarily cash, but I think we have to have a system that you can have a physical commodity that I can hide under my bed. Because if Jack doesn't like me and he's able to call the guys who are on Apple Pay and say, shut down his account, if I can't go to the grocery store, if I can't buy things, if my credit, quote unquote, is stuck in my phone, and my phone is useless because Jack doesn't like me, then I'm a powerless. I have no agency left.
You're lucky. I like you. You're lucky.
I want to add a caveat to something I said earlier. I wanted to pull up information about what I referenced. What I was referencing, it's not a study about social rejection versus physical pain. There's 2 articles I'm looking at here, but basically the idea is that they have shown that we process social pain in the same part of the brain that we process physical pain with.
Wow.
And there's also a very interesting perspective from psychology and psychologists. I'm not sure if it's the consensus or not, but basically that emotional pain is in many ways worse than physical pain because it can be triggered by memories in a way that physical pain cannot. So, for example, I can remember something from the past that hurt me or was difficult for me, and the emotional trauma of that can sort of return, whereas if I remember a physical injury, I'm not going to literally feel that physical pain in quite the same way.
Wow. Yeah, emotional pain can make you adopt a posture, which can then bring on a certain sort of tension leading to injury.
Unless you dream it. Have you ever had a dream where you have physical pain and you wake up and something hurts? I do something all the time.
Interesting.
Yeah, all the time.
If you're having a dream and you want to get out, close your eyes really tight till they hurt, and then when you open them, you'll be awake. The pain wakes up.
So I found an account that has some backstory on how this nuclear power plant situation started. So apparently they're saying that, and again, caveat, right? Fog of war, grain of salt, blah, blah, blah. that they're saying that the Russians rolled up and demanded that the power plant surrender and that the defenders of the plant surrender. They said, we have overwhelming force. You should surrender. You should stand down so that we can take over this plant and do so peacefully. The defenders refused, and that's when the firefight started.
Wow.
So those were Russian soldiers on the ground.
So it was Russian soldiers on the ground, and it looked like they were defenders. And if you look at that clip that a few people have pulled out of that live stream, it looks like you can actually see tracer fire rounds being fired from the roof at the Russian artillery.
Okay. And then, was there incoming artillery?
Well, the artillery's on the ground.
Right next to the power plant?
Yes.
Oh, are they firing that artillery at the power plant across the street?
Well, at the defenders.
Wow, that close range.
Yes.
Wow.
That's insane.
Yeah, that's what you're seeing in the video.
Okay. I thought stuff was coming from out. And then I thought I saw missiles flying outward from there, but that wasn't what I was
No,
looking
those are
at.
just shells.
Okay.
Yeah, no. So we actually just watched a battle take place in real time.
Yes, we did.
That's kind of amazing.
Yes, we actually did.
I remember
A
there
modern
was
siege even.
a couple modern feats of social media. The first was when the Al-Qassam brigades in Palestine were firing rockets into Israel, and the IDF and the Al-Qassam brigades were tweeting at each other in a flame war during a hot war.
Literal flame
and a
war.
lot of people actually laughing there because it was like, Al-Qassam was like, we will wipe you out, and the IDF was like, try it, we'll stop you. And I'm like, they're tweeting at each other. But then there was in the Middle East, we got a GoPro attached to a tank to a tank, and the soldiers who were shooting back at it or being fired upon they also had GoPros, and so the footage made it to the internet where researchers were able to find both perspectives and put it in a single video where you could see both sides of a conflict online. Crazy stuff. Yeah.
Could you hear both the voices of the people from either side?
You couldn't hear anything from the tank because the camera's outside and the people are inside, but you could hear the people on their.
Well, have you seen the Chechens and the Azov leaders are now cutting videos about each other, about talking about essentially how they're gearing up for this massive fight in Mariupol.
Wow.
And so those are considered your most brutal fighters on either side. I mean, and for Azov, I mean, you can find very quickly videos of Azov committing beheadings, committing crucifixions of ethnic Russians. Chechens, I think, goes without saying, extremely, extremely brutal. Or if you know anything about the Battle of Grozny or the Chechen Wars. And so the leaders of Kadyrov, who is the leader of the Chechens, is now coming in. He's pro-Putin, fighting for the Russians, going in specifically targeting that Azov battalion. And some of the messages I was getting from a contact that I have that's active duty right now was that they were, possibly trying to get Azov to at least surrender, and they were saying, "Hey, we just want the city. We don't need to kill all of you. Just leave, and we'll let you go out to the west. Well, you can go to Lviv. We won't even, we'll let you surrender and just evacuate." And of course, Azov is saying no.
We saw video, Azov, member of the battalion, dipping bullets in pig's lard,
Right.
And then saying we're going to get, because a lot of Chechens are Muslim, and that's also very concerning because it
Well,
brings
Habib.
religion into it, which
From UFC, Habib, the greatest.
Yeah, yeah.
he's like a
Chechen.
governor, isn't he? A mayor or something? No, I'm thinking of a.
You're thinking of the two brothers, right?
Yeah, there's an MMA
Ukrainian.
fighter that's like a mayor of a city in Russia right now.
Russia?
Klitschko?
That's Ukraine.
That's Ukraine.
Oh, Ukrainian.
No,
Ukrainian brothers.
that's and they're boxers. That's
Yeah.
completely.
Oh,
yeah.
I got it a third right. Thanks.
No,
They're fighters of some sort, and they're somewhere.
I
over
remember
there.
him being a
You should write
a
speeches
monster.
for Joe Biden.
Call me Joe.
These are the facts.
Jamie, look
The
it up.
brave Uranian people.
Yeah.
That was hilarious.
Iranian people.
The Iranian people.
It's still ringing him. By the way, I noticed you guys mentioned and called it a State of the Union. I can't, in good faith. It's a campaign speech.
Yeah.
At the end, he
Thank
did say
you.
the State of the Union was
True.
strong,
Yeah.
and it's strong because the people are strong.
Strong.
Technically, you could argue it was a State of the Union because at
You
the
notice
very end.
nobody's even questioning why Putin is doing this now. Have you noticed that?
Yeah,
That
yeah,
Everyone kind
yeah.
of gets it.
It's
So
so
that
true.
that narrative isn't even the narrative is okay. You can ask why is he doing this, right? And I think there's a lot of clearly a huge debate on that, and he's not been very clear about it. In some ways, he has his stated purposes, but we think there's probably some more than that. But nobody's asking why now. Everybody kind of gets that. Yeah, this is the time.
Well, he
to do
actually.
this.
So what happened was Biden pulled him aside and really intimidated him, and made it very clear that there would be repercussions if he tried to take the hearts and minds of the Iranian people. And so
Yeah.
Putin said, "All right, I won't."
Did he whisper in his ear?
Yeah, he whispered.
I think
I want to mention this too, Ian. Your point about it being more of like a campaign speech, I completely agree. Which is why we just released a cartoon about this today for Freedom Tunes. If you guys want to check that out. Just want to plug that because that's very much along those lines.
When he said he was going to help cure, what did he say? He was going to cure cancer?
He said we're going to end cancer as we know it.
Thank
What
God,
are you
finally.
talking about?
No. As we know it.
Yeah,
what is that?
They're going to change definitions.
Oh,
like
okay.
they do.
He's going to do gain of function research.
I
Yeah,
thought he was retconning cancer.
He's just going to change the definition of the word.
man.
He's like,
Good.
so I fulfilled my promise. Called up Merriam-Webster and said, put another word in there, and now it's different as we knew it.
It's a different word. Now,
Different
man.
word.
You're
Little
gonna
tiny
cure
Webster comes
canker,
out.
man.
He was talking about astrology cancer. He was
Yeah.
talking
I
about
see.
these people. Oh man, I just can't stand the cancer.
I think so. When I think
the worst
people
sign.
who hate Trump, and there's people who dislike him, I think when they would hear Trump tell a story, I can imagine what their reaction was. Like, this guy, he's so full of himself. He's such an idiot. Blah blah blah. When Biden told that story, I looked at Putin and I said, I don't think you have a soul. And he looked at me and said, we understand each other. Did anyone believe that
No,
actually
that
happened?
never happened.
Right?
Who's
Does
saying
anyone,
he didn't
so,
remember it?
so Trump
come
tells
on,
a
man.
story and they're over the top and they're silly. Biden tells a story and even his supporters are like, yeah, dude, that didn't
That
happen.
definitely
Putin was a
didn't
bad dude.
Putin was asked about
I
that.
said, hey,
Boys.
Esther. I said, hey, Putin, get off the diving board, or I'll come and drag you off.
In an NBC interview with Putin, they asked him about that, and he was like, "I don't remember. It was a diplomacy thing. So if he
Yeah.
insulted me like that, I don't know why he did that."
That's just like a weird thing to
Joe
say.
Biden's like, Vladimir Putin was banging the razor blade on the curb.
Get it
all
rusty.
Yeah.
Put it in a barrel. Bang his nuclear weapon on the curb. Get it rusty. Put it in a barrel.
Well, also like
Called him Esther Williams or something.
I
right?
said you
Get
get
the
off or I'll drag you off.
pomade. Yeah.
I find it hilarious that with Trump is like, if you touch the Ukraine, I will nuke Moscow. Like a very real concrete threat. And Biden's like,
You don't have a soul, man.
okay. And Putin's like, okay, what does this?
What does this
I
mean?
have. Joe
Wasn't-
Biden
what- so
thinks I have no
wasn't-
soul.
didn't-
Let's
Putin's-
take Ukraine now. Okay.
Putin's like,
oh no,
Putin-
Joe Biden will not like me if I do this.
Putin's like, I've never had a soul. I'm glad you recognize that.
Putin, like Biden says that you ain't got a soul, man. Then he walks away, and Putin, confused, looks over to like Sergei Lavrov and says, "He says I have no soul." And he goes, "Yes, let's take Ukraine." Okay.
No, exactly. Do you like what an unbelievably insane thing for him to ever, even if he did say that. Do you think that somebody on the international stage wants their enemy to think they have a soul? Do you want to be seen
Yeah.
as a bleeding heart type?
No,
No.
I mean,
well, Biden does.
No, yeah, exactly. It's just so ridiculous. As if when they're like, "Oh, this is so bad for public relations. People will think I am not nice guy."
yeah,
this
you
would,
don't.
this would make a good like
Which actually
four-panel
would be
comic.
the downfall of Putin inside
If
Russia.
people
This-
didn't think he was a nice guy.
This would make like a
Yes,
good
if they thought
four-panel.
he was a nice guy.
A good
no,
four-panel
exactly.
comic would be like Trump saying, "I'll nuke Moscow," and Putin looking to Lavrov and being like, "Let's hold back for a minute." Then Biden saying, "You have no soul," and he'll be like, "Okay, we're good."
No, it's
Yeah.
only like Trump gives a direct threat of violence, and Biden's like,
You're mean, man.
Don't attack me in my vulnerable spots, which are here, here, and here.
He's like, hey, man, it'd be really mean if you did this.
Biden actually did that.
Yeah, he totally
He's like,
did.
"You ain't got a soul, man. So I'm going to show you a list of all the places you better not attack." Here you go. Just that one's most
I
important.
trust you.
That's crazy, man.
No,
I don't-
it's a fundamental misreading of this, and you can dig into some of the philosophical aspects of this where, when you look at the United States in many ways, at least in terms of how our regime is positioned, it's Athens and Sparta, right? So we are the sea power, we want commerce, we want trade, we want these sort of globalized rules. We want to be able to do business with the rest of the world, whereas Russia predominantly is a land power. They are a land-based power. We were just talking earlier about how they have so many issues for them to be able to get to sea. So they have that mindset of strength over everything, power over everything, might makes right. And it does have a deeper sense of cultural traditionalism, whereas in the U.S. it is this more, sort of small p progressivism of this enlightened, we can always be better, we can rise above, right? These are two ideas that are in not only philosophical contention but spiritual contention as well. And I think if we fail to understand that, we are completely misreading the situation. Not only, and Bill Roggio had a great article about how we've completely misread Russia's strategy in the war. I think that's obvious, but at this point, right, Russia isn't losing just because they didn't take Kiev in the first 24 hours. But I think we completely misread the way Russian leaders are even the way that they think. So if you can't understand how or appreciate how your adversary thinks, how can you ever attempt to get ahead of their decision cycle, get inside their OODA loops, or even predict their future moves?
It's so true. Lawrence Southern made a great point about this yesterday when referring to China, or 2 days ago. We have no idea how the Chinese think, but they know exactly how we think because they go to the UN and say the United States of America is racist and they don't care about black lives.
I would advise
we know
reading-
China doesn't care about minorities. China, in order to sell the new Star Wars film in China, they had to reduce the size of a black actor on the poster. They don't care.
I get messages from time to time from Chinese citizens that are like, CCP is not China. And so if you really want to understand Chinese, read The Romance of the Three Kingdoms or watch the movie and then read the book.
Yeah, but I think I know what you're saying, and I agree with you 100%, but I would go even a little further. In right now in America, it is not just like we have a small p progressivism. It was not long ago that the American flag on a Nike sneaker caused uproars.
Yeah.
Right. So not only do we have a progressivism, we are intentionally led by this administration, quite frankly, or the progressive left. We are intentionally destroying the pillars of our foundation.
Yeah.
And the smallest things, and we've talked a lot about this on the show, the smallest things that unify us, like the national anthem. Well, you should be able to protest that. And this little moment, well, that should be up for debate. And the George Washington, maybe we should change the name of the school. So I think if you're Putin, and this is not, shilling for him at all, don't get me wrong, but if you are him and his administration and Russian power, and you look at the West and say, they don't even respect their George Washington.
Right.
Why are we afraid of these people, right? Like, we changed the name of Abraham Lincoln School in California.
Do you think maybe it's possible that Xi Jinping feels threatened by how introspective we are?
No doubt.
And how diverse our army is.
Yeah, that was it.
Wait till he sees our diversity. training.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh,
When-
well, we got to
well,
talk about that next
All
week.
of our
why-
soldiers are doing TikTok videos where they're
That's
all
why
quoted
Russia
pronouns.
invaded. Russia saw the
Yes.
threat of the West diversity trainings, and he was sweating bullets, and he was like, "We have to invade
Must
now
do
before
this
it's
now."
too late."
Yeah.
Once they all learn about diversity, inclusivity, and equity, we're done.
No, what you're seeing is, so we've become quite decadent in this sort of 30 years since the fall of the Soviet Union. This idea of Fukuyama's end of history and everyone's going to adopt. So instead of thinking that our values were Western or that they were derived from the Bible, that they're Greco-Roman legal practice, European law, etc., principles, Enlightenment, all of that. No. We decided that these were universal principles and that we could go on these nation-building projects around the world and that we could impose our way of thinking on everyone because our way of thinking was natural and we don't even need all this history, as you're describing, to back it up that we've advanced from or that we've developed from. No. These are just the universal values, and our job now is to proselytize the world and evangelicize them to our way of thinking. So the first place, of course, that we're going to try that is Afghanistan, right? Because we're going to turn Kandahar into California, and we never once sat back and thought, maybe the rest of the world doesn't want those things, or maybe they don't think that way. And so that's why you're seeing now, instead of actually focusing on the things that would make our country strong, like energy, strong currency, we do need a strong US dollar, by the way. If the US dollar falls off its perch, that's really going to be bad for a lot of Americans, because I think that a lot of the people out there that are living paycheck to paycheck, that don't have a lot of savings, you always see those studies out there, and I'm sure it's much worse now about how many people have less than, $5,000, $2,000 in their checking accounts. What happens to them when that checking account becomes completely worthless overnight because the U.S. dollar loses its world reserve status?
They'll print another $8 trillion and try and
Just
give
keep
everyone
printing.
$4,000 to get them float
so
for 2 more months.
So you're seeing now a complete reworking of the world order, and that's why, even as horrific as these scenes are that are coming out of Ukraine, the long-term implications of this might actually be worse.
Yeah.
Because unipolarity is gone. The international rules-based order is gone. Multipolarity is returning. That's going to be a huge problem for us because remember, even, we talk about the SWIFT system. Okay, let's, pull the nuclear plan and kick Russia off the SWIFT system. Well, the SWIFT system only works because it's backed by the US dollar. If Russia's already planning to get off the dollar, then they don't need it.
Yeah. Well, isn't it interesting? Oh, no.
Please, no.
Well, it's interesting how we like to play philanthropist and act like we are exporting Western values around the world and helping people live better lives because we care about the downtrodden, when in many circumstances it's either militaristic intervention or economic bullying to force our way of life onto other people, even in countries where they're not ready for it, or ready for it is the wrong term, because some of the things that we try to import into these countries aren't things people should ever be ready for. I find it fascinating, and I don't think it's a coincidence that the intellectual founders of neoconservatism were former Marxists. And look at the neoconservative mission. Look at what we tried to do in Afghanistan. Oh, we're going to completely and fundamentally restructure a culture at the barrel of a gun. And this country, this entire nation, with a history that we don't even care to understand, is going to bow before the order we have determined is the culmination of history, which is how they conceptualize democracy now instead of Marxism as neoconservatives, because we ordered them to at the barrel of a gun and were able to restructure their thinking.
It's crazy, dude. I don't even want to get. I was looking at a picture of the bath party. Saddam
Didn't work,
Hussein's
by the way,
bath
but
party,
continue.
and you just see these young frat boys. It's too long of a conversation to go into now. Check it out though. Saddam Hussein bath party image, and you see Saddam as a young rambunctious youth. That guy was a nut.
Well, the thing that I find bizarre about this whole conversation from the 30,000 foot level, especially, are we invading? Do we not invade? What is the role of NATO, et cetera, et cetera? It was not very long ago that like 1.5 million Hutus and Tutsis in Rwanda slaughtered each other with a machete. And the West just sat there and watched it and said, wow, that's bad. I mean, like literally over 1,500,000, and the majority of them were hacked to death. And we just sat there and were like,
with Chinese machetes.
That's bad. But there was, so I don't understand. Should we intervene when there is evil happening as a philosophy? I understand that position. But we're ready to jump into the Ukraine, but no one wanted to go to Rwanda. So what's the difference?
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.